And then breathing through your nose. Obviously on blocks, and I think most of you know that you can use blocks plus a blanket. If you're on 2 blocks, you'd sit on a blanket. You'd have a blanket under your shins too. If it's not too much of an oxymoron, interoception, that is drawing attention more and more central. So this isn't stopping or starting anything, it's just letting go of expectations, anticipations, what we sometimes describe as upadana. Means reaching out, upadana. On the wheel of life, this follows Trishna first, and then we come to upadana. And this is one of the places on the wheel of life that you can escape from the cyclic rounds of compulsive existence. But we won't talk more about that now, even though it's quite a good trailer. We're going to open the fingers fully, stretch them out, and feel what goes on elsewhere in the body. And the best way to feel is to be relaxed. So I've often said, calmness conditions connection, the 3 C's of yoga. And you'll be able to feel if you open your fingers, or when you open your fingers, the shoulder blades go a little deeper into the back ribs. And conversely, when you close the fingers, there's a sort of softening there. And you can oscillate between open and closed. And there are further consequences, of course, to the shoulder blades going deeper into the back ribs. An ability, a natural, easier ability for the chest to become light, for example. It's kind of impossible for me to say everything that you need to do, but play, lila, purpose, artha, and lakshana, signs, come together to help point us towards whatever needs to happen. So playing between closed fingers, open fingers, and movements of the pelvis. Inhaling from your inner groins to lift up on the inhale. Exhaling, right hand on the floor behind you, left hand crosses over both legs. That's it. Yeah. Aparigraha means empty of grasping. Now, most of our nervous systems are not empty of grasping, are they? And that's not what's meant here. We're not supposed to, get rid of anything. But empty of grasping means not attaching to the grasping mechanisms that we all experience conditioned into our nervous system. It's a bit like the difference between seeing wild horses running, which is a beautiful, beautiful sight, free, their manes moving in the wind as they run, their tails behind them, beautiful. And the difference between that and getting caught up, say, on a rope that's tied around one of those wild horses, and it accidentally gets tied around your ankle, and then you're pulled by it. 2 very different experiences, not to the horse, but to you. So this is the difference between this grasping and non-grasping. Okay, return to center and keep lifting as you continue around the other way. This is Parivrita Sukhasana. So empty of grasping or empty of reaching out, upadana, doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means we're not attached to it, like the wild horse is running, and it makes a difference. Feeling the compulsions in the nervous system, that can be beautiful. It can be a beautiful thing to see how natural it all is, how interdependent it all is, how selfless it all is, how much it's sort of hers, the goddess, as it were. And your breath, of course, is your predominant, your key indicator, your key sign that flow, the vahi condition of flow, vahi means flow, is manifest here and now. Okay, well done. Turn back to center, palms up again. Jnana mudra. Deep breaths. Drop the shoulders, soften the eyes, breathe through the nose. Notice anything that's arising, uncertainty, calmness, restlessness, steadiness, desire, aversion, you know, and this sense of looking at it like wild horses running is just, none of that's your business in a way, whether there's a desire in this nervous system or aversion in the nervous system, whether there's confusion in the nervous system or clarity in the nervous system. That's all fine, completely fine. Okay, now we're going to release the fingers. We're going to change the cross of the legs. So the other leg will go in front. Should be a gap between the legs and pelvis, ideally. And we're going to draw the buttock flesh out and back. Don't forget, I'll just remind us that you can use a block under the derriere, French for bottom, or more than one block. And I'm showing you by lifting up my pelvis how beneficial that can be in terms of the length through the deep belly, the psoas major, which I know everyone in the class here knows incredibly well now after today's teacher training. Palms up, breathing through the nose, playing left and right, forwards and backwards, for the purpose of absorption. And if we're clear that A, the purpose is absorption, and that B, absorption has indicators. Because you could easily think, I am going to be absorbed, I am absorbed, but not actually be absorbed. But the indicators, the signs of absorption, can't be denied. They're straightforward, they're obvious. Like, for instance, the breath opening up into a more spontaneous experience. The breath opens up into a more spontaneous experience. So when there's movement of the kind that's correct, it will have the sign of the breath opening up to verify that. It will also have the sign that we feel more absorbed. It will also have the sign that doubt goes down. We stop doubting. Just like if you're playing a musical instrument, after a while, the thinking processes go, the self-consciousness goes, and there's something you're surrendered to. And of course, people love that, playing musical instruments, going for walks in the countryside, cooking, art, yoga, all because of this power that they potentially have. Now, stretch and close your fingers again and see if you can sense into the three main nerves that run from the brachial plexus in the upper back down to the fingers. So as you open and close, just see if you can feel something subtle. Because it's subtle, it doesn't need reaching out for. And so it doesn't need tension. Calmness conditions connection. The calmer you are, the more contented you feel, the more the nervous system will open up like a fern uncurling in the spring. Okay, when you're ready, release from that position and come to your forearms. The forearms of your two arms, obviously, unless you're some sort of bodhisattva or something. So you're going to bring your forearms onto the floor, and it's as if you're holding bunches of flowers, which is a nice thing to do, by the way. Okay, as if you're holding bunches of flowers. Those of you with a really good imagination can imagine which flowers they are. I've gone for freesias because I like the smell. Stretch your legs back and lifting the body up. We're back in our triple paradigm, Lila, Artha, Lakshana. Play, purpose, sign. So play could be the pelvis bouncing or swaying or a combination thereof. And it's there for the purpose of absorption. We become unabsorbed in the interdependent field when we become overly absorbed in particulars. So like a particular idea or a view or an opinion or physical sensation. So moving helps us to share so that we don't become overly fixated on any part of the body or any associative view. Now bring your knees forwards and well done, everyone. Don't forget, come up to the kneeling position. Don't forget you can put something between the heel and bum And you should, if the knees are tight. It's really worth doing. Rest one hand on top of the other. Bhairava or Bhairavi mudra, depending on which hand is in which. And Bhairavi, if it's the right hand supported by the left. Bhairava otherwise. And just breathing. Now, I don't know if you find it, but I find that there's a bit of movement that's part of my experience of flow. So some of you might find that if there's a little bit of movement on the shin side to side, we're obviously massaging a great many muscle or myofascial areas, anterior tibialis, hamstrings, quadriceps, gluteal muscles, lower back muscles, abdominal muscles, right up to the shoulders, the myofascia, and even into the neck, everywhere. You can feel it. So, as you move left and right, if you're calm, calmness conditions connection, and relax, and you can help yourself to be calm by reflecting, oh, it's nice to be doing yoga together on a Friday, or it's so nice to be doing this class either directly at the Buddhist Centre or connecting to the energy of the Buddhist Centre, or I just yoga's just, I love it. It could be. Attitude does make a difference. Okay, now we're going to release the hands. We're going to come into the version of balasana that I don't do that much, but I still like it. And that's the knees together. Now, just to say that if you've got a block between the heels and buttocks, you're going to need some stuff ahead of you. I'm gesticulating the height with my hands. You're going to need something for your head. Could be a chair seat, or a chair upside down, and something else further forwards, because we don't want the bum to lift off the heels. So we're going to come forwards slowly to our blocks or chair, or to the floor if your bum is in contact with the heels, but slowly enough that the tissues can release as you go along. As we used to say in Vajrasati Yoga, moving in and letting go, and not just used to say it because I just said it then again, so I'm still saying it. Moving in and letting go, or letting go and moving in. Really appreciating the letting go element instead of the sort of materialist, capitalist kind of mentality of what more can I do or what more can I get. Focus also on that which is releasing. Appreciate and value that which is releasing. Learn that in many senses, the letting go is more valuable than the attainment or getting of anything in particular. So perhaps by now, some people have got their forehead resting on some blocks or the edge of a chair and their hands on something further forwards and higher up. One or two people are still coming slowly into it, not losing too much sense of openness, expansiveness along the anterior spine. So for me, if I'm really honest, it's not right for me to bring my head down even yet, because I can still feel the potential to open. When the head does come down, and that could be any time or not for ages, if you're really honest, it's a big part of yoga practice, being really honest. So, and it's a practice. We all have to work at it. You could either keep your arms forwards, or you can bring your arms back, palms up. And it's a very particular kind of release for the shoulders, for an aspect of the shoulders that doesn't always get a release for the neck and the shoulders. So breathe into that for a few breaths. It's not at all uncommon for people to have a few minor injuries to the myofascia in the neck and the upper back that can be felt and given an opportunity to repair and realign in a pose like this. Those injuries are part of of drives or programs that are driving us. And we're going to come up by bringing the arms forwards, just to give ourselves a little bit of extra assistance. Nice, isn't it? So nice. If it feels good and you don't want to come up, that's fine, of course, for any pose. Lay down on your back if you're ready to. Lay down on your back. Not that there has to be much preparation. No, I'm not ready yet. I have to just lay down, right? Feels good. So you lay down on your back, tucking under the buttocks, breathing deep and honest. Then we're going to pop our hands underneath our head with our fingers interlaced. And it's a particular kind of subtle stretch. And of course, yoginis, female yoga practitioners, that's a latterly use of the word yogini. Originally, yoginis were sort of fierce minor deities in the tantric tradition who were incredibly fierce, even frightening. But later yogini comes to mean a practitioner of yoga, female practitioner. Yogin is gender neutral, it's just male or female. And yogi is male. Now we're going to lift up feet and let the lower back settle into the floor. And several things are happening to the yogini whose mind is, or just happy in a sort of Friday evening, relaxed, breath-centered. So she doesn't drift off, because why would she? There's so much subtlety and interest and play to notice. Yoga tradition, of course, talks about the way things are being a liberating path in itself, just to take in the way things are. It goes right back to the time of the Buddha. Lift up your head when you're ready. And the lower back will get more intimate with the floor. It's worth appreciating that intimacy, breathing into that. Kriya Yoga is the yoga of 3 parts mentioned by Patanjali. There are other variants on the word Kriya Yoga, but in classical yoga, it includes study, fascination in the present. So become fascinated in the real relationships of the way things are. Now we're going to extend one leg to about 45 degrees, keeping the lower back fairly intimate with the floor. Intimate. What does that word mean here and now? Intimate. Allow it to play. Don't lock your body like a thing. Contract that, extend the other. So one goes back, one flexes, one extends. So the legs swap now. Which one's extended, which one's drawn back? And breathe into it. So just as a musician wouldn't sort of rigidly, insensitively play on their trumpet or guitar or whatever it is, there's sensitivity, there's a listening, responding. Okay, bend back, leg, bring down the head and elbows, and bring down the feet, and everyone takes a deep breath in with a deep breath out. And hopefully another, and with good luck, another, and hopefully they just keep going, because that, of course, indicates that you're alive, which is nice. And we're going to release our hands from behind the head, and we're going to raise one leg up. Doesn't matter which one. We're going to start by interlacing the fingers behind the thigh, just underneath the popliteal fossa. So the popliteal fossa is the fossa, the space at the back of the knee. Just underneath it, that is to say, just more onto the thigh, and then play with pressing the thigh into the hands and the hands into the thigh without letting the breath go shallow, keeping the breath open and expressive. So it's just 3 ingredients, but like with any recipe, we need all 3, okay? So you can't do this without pressing the hands into the thigh and the thigh into the hands, and free breathing. But once you get all 3 ingredients together, it starts to produce what we want, which is energy arriving in the patella, that is the kneecap. It might take the form of warmth or tingling or a sort of fizzy sensation. And once you feel it arriving in the patella and you're not holding your breath, then there's a sense of drawing that energy, combing that energy, brushing that energy from the knee towards the pelvis repeatedly, over and over again, because more energy keeps arriving. Do make sure that the breath is loose and open and not restricted. And when one stays long enough with those three equally in place, thigh into hands, hands into the thigh, deep breathing, then at a certain point, the heel will feel like it's spontaneously released upwards, like nothing's being done by anybody. That takes a while. You just got to stay with the three until it comes. Keep combing it up from the knee. Don't forget, don't let it accumulate, that tingling, that warmth in the knee. Keep drawing it towards the pelvis, like combing, like brushing, like stroking, like guiding. Okay, well done, gang. Super duper. Bring that leg down and take a breath or two. Tuck under the buttocks. Take really deep breaths. I hope now your breath's beginning to become unrestricted. It's becoming more expressive. And with that expressiveness, the will of the goddess, as it were, it's a metaphor for a spontaneous expression that comes when the mind is no longer being controlled by patterns. And that happens when attachment to those patterns is diminished through direct seeing. Raise up your other leg. It's quite a long sentence, wasn't it? Anyway, raise up the other leg. Similarly, hands onto the back thigh. Don't hold the breath, let it go. And whatever supports that letting go, psychological shifts, letting go of ideas and opinions and expectations. Sometimes we've got expectations, what's going to happen later. Or we look back at what happened before. And we're attached to that. We think we have to do that, but we don't. I've got to keep hold. I've got to prepare for what's coming. Whatever's coming, it's not going to be the way you imagine it to be. I'm going to say it again because it's important in case we've never heard this with real clarity. Whatever's coming is not going to be the way you imagine it to be. I don't know how it's going to be, but it's not going to be the way you might think I can predict exactly. It's always something a bit different because it hasn't happened yet. So breathing deep, pressing getting those three elements going. Hands into thigh, thigh into hands. Breathing free. And then as the energy begins to arrive around the kneecap, comb it, guide it, stroke it, metaphorically, brush it, metaphorically, sweep it, stream it. Influence it. And at a certain point with these kinds of evocative, influencing energies, the heel will at some point release upwards without anyone doing it. It's really profound when it happens, but you can't make it happen. Just got to get the ingredients and just wait for it to happen by itself. Okay, well done. Leg comes down, feet come down. Roll over onto your side. If you're in the BBC, then roll towards the Buddha side of the room. And if you're at home, you could also, if you had it set up that way, but whatever way works for you, you're going to lay on your side, ready for Anantasana, the serpent couch of the Lord Vishnu. Okay. Now you can place your hands wherever is comfortable so that the heel of the hand covers the prominence behind the ear. So that's the bony prominence known as the mastoid process. So you can adjust and readjust your bottom ribs, stretch them, stretch them, stretch them. Do the same for your armpit. Do it a few times. Really connect with the floor. Breathe through your nose. Play a little. You might roll forwards, roll backwards. And Lila Atalaksana, play is for the purpose of absorption. So that tells you how to play. If rolling forwards and pausing is absorbing, that's what you should do. If moving back and forth is absorbing, that's what should happen. And the signs of absorption will be doubt going down and its accompanying shallow breathing disappearing. Doubt going down and its accompanying shallow breathing disappearing. So on a mundane level, as you move back and forth, of course, you're pressing, the floor is pressing in, pushing fluid out from the fascia and then letting it back into the fascia. And extensive research has been done to show that this causes an increased hydration to the fascia, causing a sensation that's known as glide, where the fascial fibers don't stick to each other, they glide. And this is how we feel on a good day. Now, when you're ready, top leg comes up and you can play between the horizontal and vertical plane. Now, it doesn't suit everybody. I have to say that first as a caveat. But it's also down to how you do it. But it doesn't suit everyone to develop and bring energy up to the hip joint. But if you do it in a way that has love and space, for me, it tends to have a sort of visual component, as if there were many sort of dots of colored light, green or red colored light that were around that hip area, and some wider dispersed and arising and ceasing, coming into being and disappearing. This evokes a sort of spaciousness around the focus that helps that focus to be just right. When you've got that loving, alive, spacious, flowing focus, then you'll flex and externally rotate on an exhalation. But then reiterate to yourself that you want this sort of gathering of energy around the hip, like points of light, as if they're sort of arising and ceasing in that area, coming to brightness and fading away. A few of them closer together near the epicenter of the sensation, and then a few points of light, wider dispersal. Now we're going to reach and hold what I call the big toe, because that's what it's called. Okay, with the index finger, middle finger, and thumb, and then begin to extend by degrees. So you might go back and forth. Again, if you focus on this sort of light, spacious, arising and passing foci, focal point around the hip, I think it will be beneficial. Breathing deep, jaw passive, some of the same elements of the pose we did before are often in this one too. And the more flowy you allow this to be, the more absorbing it will be, and also the more the body will free up, for dozens of reasons that we could talk about to do with the nervous system. Lila, play, artha, purpose, lakshana. Indicators of that purpose being manifest. Okay, come down when you're ready. And then when you're ready, knees up, come up from the side, and back down again. Still facing, if you were facing the Buddha, but if you weren't, you can face a different direction, but as long as it's the same direction you were facing before. And then you take the hand that's not supporting your head and you press into the floor and you lift and extend your bottom ribs several times, and do the same as well for your armpits. So that extends and gets a little closer, and it means that you're not shunting the energy up into the shoulder and where it could get stuck and congested. So again, you can play with a little rolling forwards and backwards. The research that they did, by the way, about fascia was done around a technique, I think it's called Rolfing. It has nothing to do with Rolf Harris, but it's to do with pressing in to tissues quite robustly, in fact. So here, as you lean, you can really feel the floor push in. And for those of you receptive, you'll feel your breath wants to open up if you're in a receptive sort of attitude. So you can play, of course, this is the iliotibial tract, partly through to the quadriceps. but not just the muscles and the tendons, but the myofascia generally, muscle and fascia. A lot of people could get a lot out of this for a long time. I think I certainly could. It's a meditation that opens the breath up. But after a while, if you feel ready, and I know I don't want to pull you out of it, if you're getting absorbed, that's the purpose of the class. There's no, I'm not going to pull you out of that. But if you feel you want to, you can begin to play with the top leg between the horizontal and vertical planes, horizontal to the floor and vertical to the floor. And if it helps, visualizing the gathering as points of light, more of them closer to the epicenter of the sensation, and then the wider dispersal further out. And those points of light have a lightness to them. Lightness as in they're sort of not heavy. Lagu means light, not heavy in Sanskrit. Guru is the Sanskrit for heavy, in case you want to know. So looking for that lightness, breathing through the nose. And breath is super important here. When you feel ready, maintaining that lightness, such a profound lightness, you can flex and externally rotate on the exhalation. But keep the spirit of the focus having lightness in it. So for me, that image of those points of light, rising and passing, it really helps. And breathing into it, reaching for the big toe with your index finger, middle finger, and thumb. Try to take your hand to the toe more than the toe to the hand. Take your time and reconnect with the breath, and then begin to play. Play could be backwards and forwards and backwards again, What's great, you'd never have to go to doubt. You don't have to become dependent on a teacher or a school or anything like that. Because the outcome is always the same. The outcome is always absorption. So if it's absorbing, you don't need to double check with a teacher if it's right or not. It's like, I feel absorbed here. Great, be there. And know that absorption is unmissable because it has signs. It's unmissable. So there's thousands of possible right things you could do, from shaking the bottom leg to keeping it straight, from bending the bottom leg to keeping it straight, from letting the top leg come forwards, backwards, up, down. The list is almost endless, but the goal is one. Absorption. Samapatihi. Absorption. Okay, coming down if you're ready. I mean, if I'm honest, the way I gauge a pose is you come out when you're totally absorbed in it, when every part of your being has become that pose. That's how you know there's nothing resisting anymore. Come up from the side in your own time and into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog, which must be pronounced correctly for God's sake. Adho Mukha Svanasana. Hands further forward than the shoulders. If you've got a loose fitting t-shirt, tuck it in, because otherwise it can swamp you in the pose. And then you lift up your bum. And there's, again, several possible things that are useful, but one way or another, getting your palms to really connect with the mat is a very useful first step. So I sometimes do it like I pad my paws like a cat pads its paws. And for exactly the same reason, cats do it, don't they, to sort of arrive. Just like a dog seems to have to circle before it can sit, a cat seems to have to paw before it can sit or arrive. It's its way of coming here, being here, drawing itself away from whatever, was before. So do the same for your palms. You can either pad them or you can sway
and feel the inner palm, outer palm, front palm, back palm, lighting up. So as different parts of the palms light up, inner palm, outer palm, front palm, back palm, it becomes meditative. It acts as a draw to pull you away from the multitude of people that we find ourselves being into ekagrata, grasping one thing only. So you've got plenty to investigate just with the hands and the armpit and the arms, but there's also the armpits, the inner armpit area, opening, lengthening, and then that's measured against the outer arm. That's a lovely meditation. And then there's what's going on with the legs. So the pelvis can move, the knees can bend, but it's there. You're trying to get some energy through the lumbar. Super. Okay, well done. Come down, everybody. All the way down onto your tummy, and then up onto your elbows and forearms while you're resting on your tummy. So just like a kid watching TV, or at least that's how I used to watch TV when I was a kid. Now, once you're on your elbows, you can apply a little traction, a little pull back on the forearms to stretch the deep belly. And if you range side to side as you exerting this traction, you can find different fibers to lengthen. So medial, lateral, deep, superficial. And there's other things that can go on as well as you're moving, like the jostling of the lumbar vertebrae. So the point is, get longer. Get longer in the deep belly. Get longer in the lower back. Stretch the legs and flick them back so that the thighs face straight down and that the legs are a little way apart. Avoid squeezing the buttocks together. Okay, because it makes you look tense if you do that. No one wants that. Hands next to your middle ribs, mid ribs. There's going to be Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Light tone in the tummy, so that's drawing in and up. And we're going to be lifting everything except the hands and feet. So on an inhale, breathing out normally. Some people find it a lot better to do this with the toes tucked under, like I'm showing here, because you've got movement here. So if you're not sure, you can try it. You think, oh yeah, that's loads better. Or, oh no, I prefer it the other way. Either way, the light tone in the tummy, the lift in the chest, back of the arms down towards the heels and the hands, chest up, breathing deep. There is a stretch of the psoas from the inner groins across the lateral pubis that the meditator can feel into the sides of the lower spine as well. Breath is deep. If you look up, accompany the eyes with the chest. Okay, roll on the toes and come into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Or come into it any way that you can. Making sure your hands are equidistant from the sides and the front of the mat, and that the hands are spread wide, and that the breathing's deep and honest and expressive. And waking up into the body, waking up areas of the body that often don't feel like they're online at all, like the inner armpits. And don't expect to just decide to feel the inner armpits and then you'll feel them. You have to tune in through play, Now, there's a nice space, have a look at it, between your hands. It's a lovely area of real estate there, between your hands. A desirable place to be, I think you'll agree. So we're going to step, walk, jump, stagger, or get a taxi, or alternative to get our feet there. The hands are going to be flat on the floor, so bend your knees if you need to. But what we don't want is the back to feel compressed and tight. It should feel open and spacious. And of course, this is a big part of this is down to how long the legs are, how long the arms are, how long the torso is, how much movement there is in the hamstrings. You can help movement come into the hamstrings by moving the feet. Again, there's a lot of research into this, the releases that can happen through any part of a train of myofascia. So you can move your feet to release your hamstrings. Huh? You can move your feet to release your lower back, even to release your shoulders, even to release your scalp. So I have to be honest with you, I often move my feet a lot, especially initially, so that I don't feel I'm pulling on the muscles or their tendons, but I'm massaging all the area, the myofascia generally, so that it hydrates more. Now from here, we're going to bend the knees more, or bend them per se if they're not bent, until the ribs touch the thighs. Okay, raise your arms up behind you as if you're skiing fast. So just raise your eyes a little bit so you don't crash into that conifer ahead of you. And then raise your arms forwards and up, and then you can play. You can play in multitudes of ways. There's up and down playing. There's twisting playing. There's one arm forwards, one arm back. There's hands on the shoulder blades. There's pulsing the arms. But there's only one goal, it's absorption. And what negates absorption is tightness that's associated with attaching to particular views and opinions, which the Buddha was super clear to avoid. So you could bounce, you could sway, you could go higher, you could go lower, you could have your arms straight or bent, you could have one forwards, one back, whatever. And then if you're ready, when you're ready, you're going to stand up. Take a big, wide circle, hands to the heart, Tadasana Namaskara, deep breaths. Tadasana Namaskara is the Sanskritam. Tadasana Namaskar is the Hindi. Taking deep, honest, expressive breaths. Now, making sure you've got room behind and in front of you. Have your arms by your side. So for me, I'm going to step to the middle of the mat, but some of you have got the space already behind and in front of you. Perhaps at home, there's plenty of space, or here in the BBC, plenty of space as well. So we're standing in Tadasana. Breathe through your nose, don't do too much. Let it happen itself, let it express. Kadana means expression. So for me, again, a lot of movement takes place on my feet, just because I can feel it massaging the whole body all the way up. I'm not saying that's definitely the case, but if you don't think about it, just let the body flow and let it do whatever it needs to do to conduce to that. Now we're going to take one foot back until we're on our toe tips. So this is Patan Vrikshasana. Patan is exactly the same particle that you find in Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutra. And from here, we're going to keep taking the leg back until the foot lifts. And it doesn't have to lift much. It could just be a centimeter. Some people feel that they want to draw energy calmly, that kind of energy with light into the hip and come further forward. It's much rarer that people want to continue down, but one or two might. So don't feel held back. So you could have your foot close to the floor or coming further and further from the floor, in which case it begins to turn into Urdhva Prasrita Ekapadasana. That's not for most people, but just in case it might be for you, the hands will come to the floor, the opposite arm, an opposite hand to the foot you're standing on comes behind it. And this is Urdhva Prasrita Eka Padasana. But that's more than enough for most folk. So we're going to come up and back to Tadasana. Deep breaths. Keeping loose. So that means whatever, doesn't it? Keeping loose, not feeling like not even feeling too yogic. You could end up being all sort of yogic if you're not careful. It's awful. So stay loose, light, not really caught up in anything. Same thing with the other leg. Toes. Good, yeah. And you can really feel the floor behind you. Sometimes it's good to kind of just give the floor a little knock if that feels good to you. Sometimes it does, just to kind of keep awake. And as before, with the chest up, all you have to do is just let the foot come a little off the floor. It's a meditation. The arms stay back. You can even take a mudra with your fingers if you wish. Some people feel that the pose wants to go further forwards, but we're not going to hold it back. We're not going to hold it back. Patan Vrikshasana, the so-called toppling tree, it's bad Sanskrit, it's falling or flying, patan. And occasionally, one or two people feel that the thing just keeps coming forwards, in which case it might turn into Urdhva Prasrita Eka Padasana. But for most people, it's not going to, and that's fine and good, no problem whatsoever. But it's fine also to turn into Urdhva Prasrita Eka Padasana, which means upwardly raising one foot. But either way, enough's enough, even a good thing. We're coming up calmly. Have a little shake out. Breathe through your nose. Place your hands on your hips and step your feet generously apart. So generously apart. Don't be stingy with your stride. Take a couple of deep breaths. We're going to turn the left toes in, the right foot and leg out, turning on the ball of the foot first, finishing off the turn on the heel. Should guarantee you heel to arch alignment. Should guarantee that. And the stride is generous. That's why we call it Uttita. Even though I'm sure you followed my instructions, double check that you do not have heel to heel like this. I've got heel to heel. You might not be able to see on Zoom that well. Don't have that. Have heel to arch. It's not such a problem if the foot is further forwards. That's not such a problem. It's a problem when it's further back, when it's too far back. Stretch your arms out. Light tone in the tummy. Find the pelvic floor. Breathe through your nose. Raise your lead arm. Inhale, exhale. Back of the leg supports the front of the leg. Back of the leg supports the front of the leg. That's it. Enjoy it. Breathe like you're relaxing. Breathe like whatever you were worried about is now over. You know, that feeling is like, oh, I've got a big day ahead. And then when you get in, you did it. Maybe you had to do a presentation, or perhaps you're going for a meeting that you're worried about, or just anticipating, and it's finished. It's done. It's like it's done. Or even after a longer period, like you had to get through this term or this semester or whatever. Okay, inhale, coming up. Feet forward, hands to hips, breathing deep. Jaw soft. Just spend a few moments tuning in on the pelvic floor. Just tuning in on the pelvic floor without the sense of I've got to do or not do, or just tune in on it. So that means keeping your breath really free. So the pelvic floor is the area between the pubic bone and the tailbone, including the pubic bone and the tailbone. And don't restrict the life, the life force and the will of the life force in the pelvic floor. So it's sort of, life force has a way of dancing. The body is part of the wider field. In the Vedanta, we would describe it as Atman, the sort of personal sense of me, myself, and I, and Brahman. And they're part of the same field. Turn your back toes in, staying aware of the pelvic floor, front foot and leg out, turning on the ball of the foot first and finishing off the turn on the heel. How many of you did it correctly? Most of you, but not all. Stretch your arms, lift your chest. Breathing, find the pelvic floor again. What a joy, what a simple Friday evening treat to be asked to find the pelvic floor, but without any abstraction needing to be attached to it. Inhale, exhale. Coming down, the back of the leg supports the front of the leg. The back of the leg supports the front of the leg. Yeah, good job. The jaw remains passive, does it? How's the breath? Any connection between the jaw and the breath? What about the heart? Any connection between the jaw, the breath, and the heart? What about the universe? Any connection between the jaw, the breath, the heart, and the universe? Don't be afraid of infinity. Okay. Inhale, come on up when you're ready. Hands to the hips, feet face forwards, breathing deep and honest. Take a few deep breaths. Now let's locate the hip joints with this, I think you'll agree, slightly funky motion. Very slightly funky. Okay, perhaps you can hear some music. I'm hearing Brick House by the Commodores, if you've heard the song. Anyone know that song? No, you don't know it. It goes something like, she's a brick house. She mighty, mighty. You don't know that song? Oh, it's great. Anyway, hear your version of Brick House, and then raise your arms up from your hip joints and breathe easy. Good Lord, I can't believe you haven't heard that song. Have you heard it, Lee? Yeah, you've heard, of course, yeah. No one else has heard it, though. I can't believe it. Finding the pelvic floor, back toes turn in, front foot and leg turns out, whole body's turning that way. She is a brick, a house. Okay, walk your front foot across the width of the mat. Lift your back heel up, externally rotate. Some of you Zoomers have heard that, right? Brick house by the Commodores. Okay, and then if you haven't already, or you want to, again, lift the back heel, externally rotate it and bring it down after that. Light tone on the tummy, find the pelvic floor. Be aware of the hip joints. Inhale, raise your arms from the hip joints. Exhale, bend your front knee. Teasing the tissues of the back leg into alignment is often aided through play. That is to say, the lifting of various parts of the back foot, and sometimes all parts of the back foot except the ball of the foot on the big toe side. And in those moments, one can tease tissues around. And I love that for the meditative feeling, but also for the spaciousness it can bring to the body. Okay, inhaling, coming back up. Turn back to the front, hands on the hips, take a breath. And then another. And then another. So you're just giving yourself to the breath. Just let yourself move from the pelvis again. Select your tune. Obviously not Brick House, apart from me and Lee. But, something else funky. What was that? What are you singing? Oh, George Clinton. Yeah, that's a good choice. Yeah, just something funky like that. George Clinton's great choice. Commodores, early Commodores. They weren't very funky later, but they did all that once, twice, 3 times a day and stuff. Okay, raise your arms up. Turn your back toes in. Front leg out. Turn the whole body around. Turn the whole body around. Walk front foot further across the width of the mat. Lift the back heel, externally rotate it, and then land it again. Do that a couple of times. Lift the back heel. Let's do it together. Externally rotate it, and then come down again. Light tone in the tummy. So why add the word light? Light. Well, like dandelion seeds, a sort of light, and there's the ability for them to float. They are totally responsive thereby to changes of the movement of air. So in the same way, this lightness means we're able to be totally responsive to the subtle changes of prana, energy, that are happening all the time. So lightness, lagu in Sanskrit. Inhale, raise your arms from the hip joints. Exhale, bend your front knee. Light tone in the tummy. Some people find efficacy in lightening the front heel occasionally, or lightening the back heel, and then teasing the various fibers and strings and tissues around, teasing the various fibers and tissues and strings around. Repetition, abhyasa. Repetition, abhyasa. Breath deep. Inhale calmly. Come up with the inhalation. Turn back to the front, hands on your hips, deep breath. Take a few deep breaths. We are going to forward fold, Prasarita Padottanasana. And many people do find efficacy in using bricks or alternative, whatever you've got at home. You haven't got a brick to bring your hands onto. So if you think you might find it useful to have bricks or blocks or anything at all that you can use as a support, then now's the time to get those things. Turn your toes in, turn them in a little. Make sure they're equidistant from the front of the mat and balance the inner and outer ankle ad infinitum. So you can see with these movements I'm taking on my legs are balancing the relationship between inner and outer ankle. What tends to happen in most people is too much pressure on the outer ankle, not enough lift on the inner. But you can correct that through multitudes of repetitions, which are digging underneath the energy habits that are driving these kind of polarized modalities into the body, polarized like on or off, good and bad. So I could do that all evening, but I know you've got other things you want to do. So, but know that you can keep playing that. Lift up from the groins, stay with the feet, inhale, lift. Exhale, fold over the top of the front thighs, hinge from the hip joints. The thighs have a sense of rising, fingertips to your block or chair, or in some cases, some people have got real short legs and the hamstrings keep releasing. That's fine. If the hamstrings are releasing, you can go beyond the parallel. But beyond doesn't mean better. If it just happens that the pelvis is still releasing, the hamstrings are still releasing the pelvis, you go with it. For most people, they stop releasing the pelvis when the pelvis becomes parallel to the floor. And of course, honesty is a fundamental practice that conduces to successful yoga. Without satya, successful yoga doesn't happen. With profound practices, profound levels of practice in honesty, then yoga happens super easily. So be honest about where there feels like the most space. And for a lot of us, it's going to be the parallel position where the chest is parallel to the floor that we're going to find most opportunity to open the spine, to balance the ankles in a variety of different ways. But it's okay to be lower as well. So the inner groins, top of the inner thighs, echo the inner ankles in their spaciousness and echo the depth of the outer shins is echoed with the depth of the outer hips or the top of the outer thighs. Really meditative. A proper treat for the SI joint, the sacroiliac joint. Now, most of us will have come either to blocks or a chair or any height, or further down. But we're all going to come back to our fingertips, whether it be on the chair or the blocks or the floor, and we're going to walk the feet a little closer to each other, just a little closer. We're going to come as high as we can on whatever surface we're on before coming up calmly, not too fast. Imagining energy going down to the heels and walking your feet in towards each other, getting that energy down into the feet so you don't feel dizzy. So you might do that by shaking it down or dropping it down. Whatever works to just bring the energy down. Then we're going to bring our feet together for Tadasana. Spread the toes, repeatedly spread for the purpose of meditation. If you know that this is about absorption, and that absorption shows up in a much more sort of expressive, natural, sahaja, natural experience, then you know you know yoga then. It's a dance. When you're ready, raising up the right heel. And feeling into the foot arches of the left foot, the 3 foot arches, or at least as many of the foot arches as you can feel into, the medial, the lateral, the transverse. And I do that through movement, through play. And I could do that all evening. I just love all these little detailed bits. As I've said before, a great yogini gets more and more from less and less. That's what makes her a great practitioner. If you're ready to come higher, that's fine too. And it's Vrikshasana.
Hands to the heart. If possible, the foot wants to come as high up the thigh as possible, with the toes pointing down. It's fine for it to be lower down, even to the point of being right down on the floor so that the heel can be up and you can be on your toes. You can even do that with a block under your foot, or you can have your foot on your lower leg. You can even, which is a controversial thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, you can cup your knee with your foot. Now, most yoga teachers tell you never to do it, or you'll die and your family line will die out for 7 generations and so on. But if you get it right, then you're not pressing onto the knee, you're pressing above and below it equally. Huh? It does depend slightly how big your knee is and how big your foot is as well. Huh? But as I say, the ideal position is high because of the placement of the hip joint. Okay, release your hands and then your foot. Have a breath in case you were holding your breath. Shake out a little bit and breathe easy. Yeah, get a bit of George Clinton going on again. Okay, and when ready, I hope you've all got a funky tune. Your go-to tune could be Superstition by Stevie Wonder. Everyone knows that one. It's funky, isn't it? When you're ready, get those 3 foot arches online. 3 foot arches. And I do it by moving, by playing, by feeling in, by tuning out of one thing, the dross, into this thing, this unnameable reality. Breath is your indicator. There is a clear indicator. When ready, if ready, the foot will come up for Vrikshasana. Breathing is deep. Breathing is honest. Breathing is expressive. There's a relationship between inner leg and outer leg, from low down to high up. Breath is what matters here. Wobbliness is part of the fun. Okay, well done. Release and place and take deep breaths. Now, some of you at home might want to use a chair for this. I think everyone here will be okay without a chair. So the chair, if you're using it, will be placed in front of you as a support for your hands. And so if you think, I might do, just get one, put it there, seat faces you, back faces away. But either way, we're going to bring one leg up, cross above the knee of the other, and then we're going to bend the knee. And this is where, as you bend the knee, you might be taking support from the chair here. You can support by just holding. And in some situations, moments, experiences, the hip melts and melts. The meditator is melting. There's expressive breathing. And it may come to pass, but it's not important, that through melting, the fingertips might land on the floor or on blocks or on a chair. But it's not at all important that they do. You can keep higher up on them. And then playing into the hip and buttock and referencing the breath. Playing into the hip and the buttock and referencing the breath. So in this position, which is a preparatory for Galavasana, the leg is just immediately above the knee. Okay, we'll come up. There is another aspect to it. We won't do that aspect. We're going to come up nice and easy. Shake out a little bit. Breathe deep and honest. Let's have some breath coming and going.
And when ready, raise up the other heel. And similarly, cross that leg over the other one. And remember, you can have a chair for this in front of you, because you bend the standing leg. That provides the support for this crossed over leg. And then one becomes a meditator. So one is breathing into it. One is sensing the melting and moving at the pace of the melting. The melting is happening with the breath, the release of the breath, the release of the body. Soft jaw and eyes, brain and throat. But without the breath, you don't have a guide. So that is your guide. Couple more deep breaths, if you're okay to stay a couple more deep breaths. And then coming up, slow and calm, breath centered. Well done, everyone. And shake out a little bit. Breathe deep. Keep that energy down in the feet, So you drop it down to the feet any way that you can bring it down into the feet. We're going to come into Gomukasana, and for many people, this is definitely a block seated pose. I'll do it without sitting on a block, but some of you want to sit on the block. First thing to do is sit down on the floor, probably on a block or two, like this. And then your top leg, so your both legs over to one side. And then once you've got both legs over to one side, you get one of them, you lift it up, and you bring it over the top of the other one. And then with 1 foot back and 1 foot forwards, you've got this diagonal arrangement. You can lift and shift, rearranging, as it were, the many different fibers of the tensegrity of the skeletal structure. So tensegrity is a sort of tensile integrity, which can be in integrity or it can be disintegrated, depending on the alignment, depending on the build-up. So what we want to do is create tensegrity, integration through tensile positioning. So that's why you lift and replace. So you realign some of these fibers so that they support the joints comfortably. And so many repetitions of movement might be helpful. Your hands can go on the floor, on your knee, to the heart, as you like, floor, knee, heart, or even on the feet, I guess. It's a meditation. Breathing through the nose. How's that breath coming and going free? Move in ways that conduce to the breath coming and going free. Okay. It's a good one to stay longer. We won't stay longer. We'll come out nice and easy. And legs moved to the other side of the body. Breathing through the nose. Same thing. Top leg up and over the bottom. 1 foot back, 1 foot forward. You can be sitting on a couple of blocks or even more height. You can have support.
realigning the fibers. One thing that I find useful is a stacking of one knee more above the other. But again, you're still referencing all this to alignment. And then there may be massages that you manifest through movement into certain areas that need to be loosened. And we know the loosening of the body, the energy body, is the loosening automatically of the breath as well. Keep in touch with the breath. It's very easy to forget what you're doing if you lose touch with the breath, but very easy to stay aware of the project when you're in touch with the breath. Slow and easy. Release. We're going to be coming into Siddhasana. Siddhasana is a pose where you sit on a brick block. Those of you here at the BBC, there are some brick blocks out there, out the way there. But hopefully you at home have got brick blocks. Siddhasana is a pose where you have your heels lined up with each other and with the midline of the body. You can draw the buttock flesh out and back as well. If Siddhasana is not comfortable, it's totally fine to sit in a different position, such as kneeling with a block between the heels and buttocks, or sitting in a chair. That works totally fine as well. Sit tall is the bit that really matters. You should sit tall. You should endeavor to sit tall. Eyes can be closed or partially closed. And we start to observe the breath just as it comes and goes naturally. Observing the breath just as it comes and goes naturally. Imagine as the breath's coming in that it comes from a high point to a low point. That is, from an area just above the crown of the head to an area at the bottom of the breastbone. And as you breathe out, it returns again from the area just below the bottom of the, or just around the bottom of the breastbone to an area just above the crown of the head. So all we've got is a natural breath and a visualization of its movement between those two constructed points. And as we feel the breath naturally moving like this, we're imagining that the energy moves from the high point to the low point. We can add a third element, which is mantra, hum, sa, hum on the way in, sa on the way out. which literally means swan in Sanskrit, but represents the essence nature, which is called Atman, which is a word that's super similar to the German word. In fact, it might even be identical for breath. Hum on the way in, sa on the way out. And the breath moving between 2 points. Finally, adding, in addition to what we're doing already, add bindu, a point that you imagine of scintillating bright light and epicentral, intense point at either end as you reach it. So at the bottom of the breastbone as you reach the end of the inhale, just focus on that point. So there's a little kumbhaka, a little retention of the breath while you focus before the breath turns over again. And vice versa, as you get to the end of the exhale, the bindu you imagine is above the crown of the head, scintillating, very bright point of light. And you poise for as long as it feels natural at each point before the breath turns over again. Still, we have the hum sa as well, hum on the way in, sa on the way out. Next time you take an in-breath, imagine you're drawing it all the way down to the pelvic floor. Imagine a bindu there. Pause with that bindu. Imagine light rising up from that bindu through the central channel. And on your natural exhalation, rise up that column of light all the way to the point above the crown of the head. And then breathing naturally. Get a bit of light and color in. We're going to lay on our backs just for a couple of minutes. That's all. But hopefully that will be enough for us to follow the advice that was given to Dattatreya in the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra, which I'll repeat once we're laying on our back. So laying on your back, make sure you're warm, palms facing up, Limbs fully released. Here's the advice from the Shastra, the Yoga Shastra. Find a lonely place. Lay on your back, mouth facing the sky, as if you were dead. Limbs completely released. Concentrate or focus on the big toe of the left or right foot. The aim is dissolution or merging with the interdependent field. The text says, for she who practices thus, siddhi, she must gain siddhi, success. Laying on the back, mouth facing skywards as if you were dead. In a lonely place where you're not going to be troubled or you don't feel you have to be anything or not be anything. Limbs completely loose. Concentrating on the big toe of the left or right foot. Allow a little movement now into your toes, ankles, fingers, wrists. And when you're ready, bend up the legs, giving yourself an opportunity to tuck under the buttocks and to rest the lower back completely into the breath. Then when you're ready, roll over onto your left side and lay as comfortably as you can on your left.
I often give the advice to draw the knees up a little way so your tummy has an extra soft view and the lower back is extra long. Roll onto your other side when you feel ready. Slow and easy, start bringing yourself around with a bit of light and color. You might rub your eyes. You might stretch out an arm or a leg. Just sort of soft ways in which you might come round until eventually you feel ready enough to come up from the side in your own time. Thanks everyone in the room. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And hang on, Zoomers. I've just put my glasses on to see Zoomers because you're so tiny in my little tiny phone here. Thanks, Zoomers. Thank you so much for coming along. Lovely to see you. Don't forget, what is it, 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. I'd love to see you then. And then you'll be on a bigger screen and I'll be able to see you in more detail. But I'm going to scroll through now so I can see your lovely faces. It's true, you do have lovely faces. I wasn't making it up. Look at that. Marvelous, something marvelous happens to your hair, Amanda. It's gone very wild and I like it. It's marvelous. Thanks, everyone. Really good to see you. Be happy and well. Look forward to seeing you very soon, maybe even tomorrow. Be happy and have a lovely Friday evening.